Good evening and a very warm welcome to all of you. And good morning if you're joining in from Europe to the SplashBI Business Live Middle East webinar on how people analytics aligns finance and HR for business growth. My name is Alvin Thomas and I'm the assistant editor of Business Live Middle East. There's an adage that goes, you don't just build a business, you build people and then the people build your business. Keeping this thought close, we delve into how the growth of the most financially valued asset in your company, human capital, is hampered by how HR functions are seen as cost centers with little direct impact on business results. Today, we are joined by stellar experts in the field who will elucidate three key elements: identifying HR processes that most impact profitability and growth, leveraging employee data analytics to business outcomes, and how to better align financial metrics with HR metrics. Our first panelist for the day is Mr. Abdul Malik Al-Balushi. He is the Group Chief People Officer at Asyad. Before this, he was entrusted with the role of Chief Executive Officer at Oman Post. He led the brand's transformation from 2016, where he played a critical role in the transition of Oman Post through bringing in a renewed culture and advancing into emerging markets through technology, customer experience, operational excellence, and overall driving sustainable growth. Mr. Abdul Malik also brings over 20 years of extensive public and private sector experience, spanning industries such as logistics and transportation, telecommunications, energy, and utilities. A graduate of the prestigious National CEO Program in partnership with IMD Business School, under the Diwan of Royal Court, Mr. Abdul Malik also holds a Master's of Business Administration from the Sultan Qaboos University, in addition to having a Bachelor's of Science in Business Administration from the University of Arizona, USA. We would like to extend our welcome to Mr. Abdul Malik Al-Balushi. The second panelist for our discussion is Mr. John Jensen, the SplashBI HCM Solutions Specialist for UK and Europe, Middle East, and African markets. A business intelligence solutions provider who is based in the UK, John has over 20 years of international experience with cloud solutions, working with various solutions providers such as IBM, Saba, Cornerstone, and SplashBI. In the past 8 years, his focus has been on HR solutions, where 3 of those years have been dedicated to providing people analytics solutions to help organizations get insights out of their people data and to improve their business outcomes. We would like to extend our welcome to Mr. John Jensen. Moderating today's session will be Mr. Venkatesh Palakkad. Venkatesh is the principal consultant and business head of RAB HR, an HR consulting firm operating out of the Middle East and Indian markets, and is a leading global talent management solutions company. He is a senior HR professional with over 28 years of international experience, of which 18 years have been served in senior positions with large groups in the Middle East. He currently works with several clients in the Middle East on talent management and people productivity projects, and is considered a pioneer in bringing technology and digital solutions in human resources. By welcoming Mr. Venkatesh, I would also like to hand over this virtual stage to him to kickstart the proceedings. Mr. Venkatesh, on to you.
Thank you, Alvin, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you who are joining from all across the world to this very interesting presentation on data analytics with very specific reference to finance and HR. We all know that in the last couple of years, HR data especially is getting more digital, and COVID just leveraged it, just fast-tracked it. So even companies which did not really digitize their HR solutions are now fast-tracking and digitizing it. So one great advantage of this is that we have so much amount of data lying with us. And the challenge and the game is, what do we do with this data? The more organizations leverage data and link their strategic decisions to connect it to data, there is a very robust decision-making cycle. we have seen that most of the Fortune 500 companies heavily rely on cross-functional data analysis-based decision making. So turning data into actionable decisions is the name of the game. Yeah. I would now welcome John Jensen from Splash to do an introduction about SplashBI, our sponsors, and then take the discussion forward. Welcome, John, and over to you.
Just a little bit of background on SplashBI. Back in 2001, our two founders, Naveen and Kiran, decided that they were in the Oracle space, and they knew that Oracle users were not being serviced reports and insight into the Oracle solutions that they had in place. And then they decided to build an organization, build a company itself, and develop a solution that will give insight into the Oracle applications out there. And this is where we are now. And then, during that period, we have evolved into other areas of providing people analytics and other things. And I'll go through a little bit about our solutions as well, so you get an idea about what we deliver to our clients. We have about 150 employees at this stage. We are growing rapidly. But also have more than 130 customers globally, and this is a true reflection of the global engagements that we have. We're currently located in the US, the UK, and India. I'm based in India, as Alvin said to start with. Sorry, in the UK as well, Alvin said. But also we've got our headquarters is here, based in the EMEA headquarters is based in the UK. Now, some of the applications that we have out there is a reflection of this. You can see the top level is really around Oracle, and this is where we started with. But it moved into also Oracle Cloud as that came out. And now also we're working with Splash LD. So this is about legacy data. So organizations that have any kind of legacy data, they are in a transition period. Sometimes the new solutions that are coming in do not take this data in, but we can help with that in terms of storing that data so it's available for viewing at a later stage as well. We also have SplashGL, which is really for finance, to look at financial reporting, but also we're through the Excel and make that very, very visible as well. So through Excel, but in a solution like ours that gives more insight into finance and also provides some content here. SQL Connect is a new venture that we've opened up for, so we can connect to any SQL database and visualize the data that's available there. And then at the bottom here, what we're talking about today perhaps is a little bit is Splash HR, but also Splash CRM, which is our flagstones where we are providing insight with analytics and pre-built content. But SplashBI is really about building having reports and visualizations into the key data that organizations have and visualizing that in a consumable way. I wanted to show you a little bit about some of the customers that we have. I'm sure in the Middle East you will recognize some of them, and these are household names that organizations know. So we've got a very good reflection of our organizations we work with. And it goes from in any industry, because in any industry you have people behind the scenes that are delivering services in the organizations they work for. And if there are people, then we work with them from a Splash HR perspective as well. So that's what a little bit of background about SplashBI. I hope that was useful. Happy to answer any questions. If you have any, just shoot those questions on board. But today's topic is about HR and finance. Paul Taffender, he's an executive coach and also part of Taffender Consultant. And he kind of put it into perspective about, couples counseling, that, finance heads and HR directors need this counseling because they speak different languages and different worlds. But if they spoke the same language, the passion would ignite, he said, right? Now, obviously, maybe not the passion that we're talking about, but more in terms of business outcomes that will benefit everybody in the organization. So I just wanted to set the scene about this is the topic today, and I'm very excited about it. It is a a topic that everybody's talking about these days. So yeah, I'm looking forward to the conversation that we have. Venkat, back to you.
Thanks, John. That was a very, very interesting analogy of looking at finance and HR as couples with diverse views. Yes, we are wired differently. While HR looks more at lag indicators, finance looks more at lead indicators, and that's where the initial, point of disconnect happens. So we need to kind of learn to live with each other as we go ahead, like any other couples do. All right. I would like to ask my first question to Abdul Malik. Thank you, Abdul Malik. So nice to have you in the midst of us today. You've been a CEO and now you are a chief of a very large group. So you've recently taken over as the Group Chief People Officer for Asyad. So could you briefly explain to the audience what does Asyad do, and where do you see data as a challenge at a group level? You've just taken over and must be experiencing data-related challenges. So just give us an insight into Asyad and also your views on group-related data challenges.
Hi, Venkatesh. Thank you very much for having me. I hope my voice is very clear and I'm not facing a John issue.
No, you're very clear.
Very good.
Okay, Asyad is a logistic conglomerate. It's the government arm of investment in the logistics sector. Asyad is a global integrated logistics service provider. Under its portfolio, there are ports, free zones. We've got the postal operator of Oman Post, and Express is under Asyad. We've got one of the largest shipping companies in the region, carrying oil, gas, dry bulk, liquid bulk, container line also in the region. We've got a dry dock. So it's a very huge conglomerate that's looking at providing integrated logistics solution for the region and to the world. Going back to your question, Venkatesh, in general, I think I was the CEO of Oman Post, and in various positions that I've held in different organizations. Data is a very, very is the Achilles in many occasions, the Achilles heel for a lot of leaders, and not having data in the right time might impact the speed of your decision making and your reaction to the environment, whether internal or external. And if we look at HR today, the model works this way: is that HR needs to develop people context strategies to help deliver organizational objectives. And how do we do that? Is by impacting behavior, and behavior impacts performance and individual performance. And when individual performance is improved, then financial results improve. And that's how the link works. And for us, to improve individual performance, there are a lot of information that you need. You need to keep a pulse on the organization. And if it's a group, then you have more than just one organization, and you need to make sure that you have the right data to make a decision at the right speed, in the right time, and with the right value as a reaction of what's happening around you. So if we look at this, data is extremely, extremely crucial. And as you said, for our decision making, we need accurate, timely data so we can make the right decisions. At the same time, at a group level, if you're looking at improving, one of the key issues of HR is to improve effectiveness across the group. So are we delivering our goals with the right resources? Are we effective enough? Are we efficient enough? Are there opportunities to optimize across the group and create synergies? All these things are very important today for HR, and we need data. And data has to be, again, as I said before, it has to come at the right time and accurate. The other thing I think is a challenge that a lot of HR leaders face is there's always a question about HR contribution to the bottom line, to the organization's strategic goals. And there are a lot of leaders who I think sometimes struggle to find the link. Having data, whether it's part of your lead or lagging indicators, actually can have a strong give you a strong case for your investment that you need in HR. And it's a very, very important part of the way you run your HR functions at a group level. And this is where, again, yes, I agree with you. I think marriage counseling is very important between HR and finance. I'm very fortunate that I have I've never had issues with finance, and I've always, when I've led HR functions, I think one of my biggest ally was the head of finance, and we work closely to find solutions to our major issues.
Excellent. Thanks, Abdul Malik, for that great beginning. So the bottom line is how HR and finance is mastering its own data and facts can change an organization's narrative and strategic decision making, isn't it? So, John, my next question to you is this. Thanks, Abdul Malik. We'll come back to you. So you have been working with several organizations across the globe and helping them with innovative and creative ways to arrange and interpret data. Could you highlight some key challenges which organizations face today when it comes to aligning finance and HR data? We just touched upon a few things, in the beginning to say that HR relates more to lag and finance relate more to lead. That's just one point, but then there could be deeper, deeper issues in terms of how both these groups work. So could you throw some light on your experience on how do these two groups approach data and the challenges which comes out of it? Over to you, John.
Well, I think it's based on experience again in customer and client engagements. It's really about, HR is very much an activity-based organization. They have got processes in place. They're good at processes, and they've got, the way that they look after their employee is their key goal. You can almost call them the soft factors, right? And if you put it over to finance, you can say that finance is very much a numbers game. It's about the business outcomes, and it's about measuring that and forecasting that as well. So aligning those two is where we look at a little bit like HR is an activity-based culture itself, and finance is a results-based culture. So it's that kind of alignment that may not exist already. I think Mr. Abdul Malik, he was very fortunate to have those good connections before, but I can tell you that many organizations are not that fortunate. And I know we're doing a poll later to find out as well, so it'll be interesting to see what that says. But I would say that strong activity doesn't mean that you get results, because HR often have these processes in place, but they don't measure the objective of the process. Maybe from a learning and development perspective, you could say that there are certain people that go through the training courses, but what does it actually mean to the business? They don't always have insights like that, because they don't see, for example, a sales organization, if they get training, do they increase the sales numbers as an outcome? That's not often the case that those calculations are there. And you could say that it's more focused on the tasks of the HR discipline that needs to be delivered quickly and fast and efficiently, but not when it comes to cost and benefit results and analysis. So that's one thing, that strong activity doesn't mean results. And the other thing is, as you both have said, data silos. There are different systems for finance. There are different systems for HR solutions or for HR teams. And many people, aligning those is not an easy task to do. and there you need some help, right? Organizations need help to be able to align this data together. Now, HR has also traditionally looked back in time instead of predicting into the future, simply because they haven't had that capability as such. They can look at what happened in the past in terms of the recruitment pipeline and how many roles they filled, but predicting that is the challenge. And that's where it's very, very important that they collaborate with finance, because finance have got like an FTE count that they know that they need to fill, or they have a budget towards it, because finance is focused again on expenses in an organization. Organizational expenses, one of the biggest ones is labor cost, right? So having them to work closely together is something that is often a challenge. And that's hopefully where we can go into a little bit more to see how we can work on that. Does that explain?
Yeah, absolutely. That explains. So we have just touched the tip of the iceberg, and as the panel discussion progresses, we get a little more deeper into issues. So before we go ahead with the next question, I have a question for the audience. We have close to 75, 80 people who have joined the call. So I have a question for all of you. So we just want to understand how things are in your own organization. So can I have the poll on the screen? The question to all of you is this: when it comes to leveraging insights from data, how effectively would you say HR and finance collaborates in your own business? So just reflect the situation in your own organization. It's confidential, it's anonymous, so you can be free to do reflect your own thing. We just want to do a dipstick and see how our brass tack situations in organizations. So you can just use your screen and answer the question. You can just touch the radio button, which is your choice. So we'll give you 30 seconds and let's see what the answer is. So please go ahead, the poll is open. So coming to leverage insights from data, how effectively would you say HR and finance collaborates in your own business, Please go ahead. You can poll your answers. So yes, you're absolutely right. HR and finance should master the art of qualitative storytelling. Stakeholders are very, very interested in listening to qualitative stories, which is backed by numbers. So if we master the art of qualitative storytelling, then we have kind of mastered the art of using numbers and digital information. Okay? So can we see the results? Because we can't see the results. So can we see the results? Oh, okay. So it says 17% says not good at all. 46% says could be better. 26% says good. And 11% says very good. So more than 50% is still in the quadrant of could be better and not good at all. So ladies and gentlemen, we have a lot of work to do. I think this webinar is going to be very useful in trying to uncover what could we do. Okay? So let's move on. I'm going to ask the next question. This is basically covering the quadrant of opportunity. Okay, what opportunities do we have when we look at data analytics? The first question is to John. So you mentioned that collaboration between HR and finance is a key opportunity. So why do you say this as an opportunity? So where do you see an opportunity? So could you elaborate a little bit more?
Absolutely. I think, as I mentioned before, it's about the collaboration between HR and finance. If you look at some of the strengths that HR has, which is, about, client responsive, they look at the processes very efficiently. They are to some extent cost focused as well. They are trusted advice, and then they're the talent expertise that they bring to the collaboration. Now, when it comes to finance, what their strength is process governance and data expertise, because they've worked with data for a very long time, as you all know, but also looking at the business impact and then strategic alignment. So coordinating those things together in a collaboration way will bring those intangible and tangible measurements together that they can begin to communicate on and collaborate on. And then, with the access to the data expertise from finance with HR, maybe they will be able to find a common ground that they can start talking about, and then be able to partner for performance moving forward. And I think the alignment of talent, the talent knowledge that HR has, and the commercial challenges that finance have as well. When we start looking at these things together, then the collaboration will start taking place, and then that will feed the way into the positive business outcomes. And then, again, jointly, that will then enforce them both, if you want to look at the value add that they can bring to the table. Because again, because of COVID-19 and all the challenges around that, it's been more looking at cost and sustaining the organization, certainly here in Europe. But now, when things are coming back and we got the vaccine coming, then it's more about what value can we start adding to the business and to growth, but potentially, right? And I think so. That's really the area that I hope that the collaboration will take shape. And another thing I forgot to mention is also the predictability when it comes to HR. When they're working with finance, what is it that, if there is a new business objective that the finance have of increasing revenue by 10%, well, how the hell are we going to do that? And how is HR going to support that transformation? And that's where HR comes in and can start predict with the insight and maybe even machine learning and AI, be able to change things in the positive direction. So I think, this is what's missing. The collaboration will then facilitate the partnership based on a common understanding of the data. That's what I would say. That's the opportunity.
Great thoughts. So just taking a cue from you, where you basically said that collaboration of data have with a common understanding. I have a question for Abdul Malik. So if organization succeeds at the one source of truth situation, we all aspire to have that one source of truth where data comes from one source which is true for all the data, and able to integrate, connect, tabulate, and analyze data coming from disparate systems. Where do you see it as an opportunity, and how do you think this information can add value to the decision-making process? Looking at data coming from disparate sources and your ability to connect and make sense out of a confused set of data which comes to you. So where do you think this information can add value to your decision-making process? You could give some examples and,
Sure. I think John shed a lot of light around the collaboration between finance and HR. But if we look at, again, I go back to the how HR can play a strategic role toward the business itself. If the organization wants to improve revenue or improve its bottom line, what exactly is the role of people? And usually that role is not crystallized. And I think with the use of data and working with finance, HR has to look into this. Now, if we are in a perfect world, then you've got a centralized data center with proper reporting, and you've got data. Cost data can impact decisions. So employees' productivity is something that HR needs to look at. Keeping a pulse on the organization today, if you look at leading and lagging indicators, it's very easy to measure lagging indicators, but leading indicators are too difficult. And the problem is, by the time you already know, probably it's too late to make a decision what's happening in the organization. So keeping your pulse on your finger on the pulse of the organization is very important for HR to make the right decisions. Whether it's how a regional sales or a specific market sales is increasing, what are the reasons? Is there anything that's been changed that we can use somewhere else? How that learning is dispersed across the organization, if a sales team is doing better than the others. How a staff issue, a local staff issue, or a specific staff issue is impacting the performance of certain behaviors. impact the performance of a team, how engagement is being measured. You know, today we put it's very important for us to measure the satisfaction of our customers, external customers. And we put all these machines around, and we want to check if the customer is happy or not with our service. Well, happy customer, happy employee. You need to think also internally, and you need to see how your employees are doing. And if you look at, from a link point of view, a staff at a counter that is serving a customer on the counter and doing a bad job, and the customer is unhappy, and that impact is you losing probably five or six of your customers, then that's an HR problem. That directly links to you as an HR. Is how can you make that? So from starting from recruitment, your gateway, to the life cycle of the employee. That's an HR issue. It's not only a sales issue. It's not a service delivery issue. It's actually your issue as an HR, and you need to have this data right in your fingertip. What is the correlation between cost and revenue increase? Increase in direct cost versus revenue. That's very important for you as an HR professional. Is how are we increasing our direct costs? How our employment increase in manpower in various places, whether it's direct or indirect, impacts the increase in revenue. And is there a perfect mix of staffing that you need to do to get the right increase in revenue? We've seen it in many organizations where you are actually hiring people for the indirect areas, and it's not generating revenue for you. So these are things that impact HR, and unfortunately, I think in a business context, whether we like it or not, we as HR professionals, we need to know that this is our responsibility, because mostly the business leaders will not look at it from this angle. And that's where we need to come in, and we need to find this information, find a way to get the information from finance on cost, on revenue, on revenue per staff, cost per staff in certain areas, on the dynamics of the social systems of our organizations, and how they are reacting with the performance of individuals and teams.
Absolutely. So as I just mentioned, I think as HR professionals, we need to master the art of data-based storytelling to stakeholders, I think, and we should master the art of picking up data from disparate systems and making sense of it. Absolutely. Thanks for that. John, so let's get into, we have spoken a lot on concepts and how it should be, etc. It'll be good to relate to a particular case or a particular instance where, you looked at a situation where data came from different sources. So can you elaborate a practical use case scenario where HR and finance data was used to effectively solve a business case? So go ahead, because this will, for the audience, this will give a very clear indication of what do we mean by HR and finance collaborating, right? So go ahead, John. Just briefly give us a glimpse on this case.
So I will try to take you through this case within half an hour. No, I'm joking. But I think it's an interesting story that kind of solidifies an approach and methodology to use to be able to align HR with finance. And this organization is a large engineering and manufacturing organizations in Europe. And we got approached. So often it's funny when Abdul Malik is saying that, we've got a finance issue or business issue versus a HR issue, because they are often either the instigators of the communication that needs to start, or the collaboration that needs to start. Now, in this case, I had the executive vice president of HR to contact me and to talk about some of the challenges that she had when it came to the workforce capabilities. And they were finding out that they had some challenges with their internal hiring. The reason why they found that was because managers were complaining about, well, they have to go outside and then hire new people and then start training them and educate them and then get them up to speed and then become productive after a period of time. But they wanted to increase the internal hiring by focusing on that. That's what they all said to managers. So they know they had actually lost some of the top talent as well at the same time, which had an impact on their capabilities in the workforce in terms of people were actually leaving. And they were leaving, they knew they were leaving because of the lack of career or growth path for them. Now, because of the internal hiring was not very strong, they knew that they were spending a lot of money on recruiting, external recruiting, and they estimated that to be 4.8 million euros, which is not an insignificant amount. But this is where we have an example where it starts in HR, the challenge. Now, some of the key performance drivers were around the productivity and efficiency. They could see that in the production lines, they didn't have the skilled people to lead the production lines, and also showed that the innovation was also fairly low, and it had declined over time. This meant that sales were declining because of it. So that they were able to make that link. And then coming back to what we talked about before, that this obviously has a business impact. So they could see that the sales targets were not achieved. And this is where finance comes in and say, hey, what's going on here? Revenue is going down. Why is revenue going down? Let's find out. Well, it's because of sales are declining. This is not good. So that's where HR and finance suddenly started to meet up, because there was a financial impact, but also a workforce capability impact. And that's where communication collaboration started. And I think, when you look at it from that angle, you can then see that finally they can start meeting some of their targets, both of them, by starting the conversations. Now, Splash HR came in, and this is just a graphical explanation of where we sit. But what you can see in the middle is that's our solution in Splash HR. On the left-hand side, you have the sales, financial, operations, supply chain, and customers. This is where the data sits. So we take this data into our data warehouse. And then on the right-hand side, you have the HR data, application, tracking, compensation, and benefit, et cetera, et cetera. So the way that we then took the data in, we then started to analyze it, and then starting to get some insights that we were able to substantiate into financial metrics and outcomes by pushing up levels. Now, on the very right-hand side, you have higher onboard develop. So these are the HR processes. On the left-hand side, you have revenue profit. So this is where finance sits, right? But based on the insight, they actually started looking at the people practices, where they found that succession planning was not very strong at all. And they needed to shape up, because the talent management team were in their own little silo, but they weren't working with recruitment team. So that means that, again, the collaboration was not there. But they then established that, and they involved the learning and development team, because anybody knows that succession planning needs to also have, what learning and training do you need to have to be able to fill this position or get promoted even, right? And then you can then see in the trend of the data that from the past, that pay had been a very important factor to why people were leaving just on its own. But the whole thing that we came in here was help them also to do a people practice, which was the workforce analytics, to start analyzing these things and then talk together and collaborate based on these dashboards and charts that they can start communicating on. Now, as an outcome, we were quite happy to see that after they implemented the changes and focused on the internal hiring versus external, that they increased that to 62%. And also that sales increased because, again, as you said, Abdulmalik, about the engagement. Engagement is so important because you get more productivity, and that means also sales. But even tweaking those little commissions, making sales work even harder because they can make more money, right? So little changes like that really matters, but you can't just make those changes without having substantial evidence that it will work. And that's where the data comes in. Now, they reduced their recruitment cost by 35%. And also, the employee engagement came up because they had now a career path in front of them, so they knew what they could do. So this is an example, and this model that you see here is called the Human Capital Value Profiler that was defined by a person called Max Bloomberg, one of our good friends, and Dave Milner. They are very strong with this model here. So, but the model itself will collate the information and then find out what are the key priorities for the business for HR to focus on to improve. And that is an example of it. I hope that helped.
Yeah, absolutely. So as I said, as you said, if you have to put value to the internal activities, value to development, value to training, value to every development effort which an organization does, yes, you need to quantify it and use an HCV profiling kind of a tool to kind of establish that. Absolutely, absolutely true. So Abdul Malik, I have a related question to you. So in your experience, can you just give us examples of what kind of finance data do you think HR can use in making some strategic decisions? What kind of finance data have you used, or should HR use in making strategic decisions? Easily available finance data. So,
yeah, thank you very much. I don't want to put our finance team. I hope there are no finance. No offense. We don't want to put. They're busy. They're busy people, and we don't want to put a lot of work on them. So, but in general, I would probably, growth in revenue is very important. I face in many organizations that I worked with is that revenue data are not simultaneous. So you wait a month until your financial closing are done, and by that time your month is done. A month out of 12 months is not is a very large period of time, and you need to know what's happening on a daily basis. That's one of the things that we've done in Oman Post is that we used to face difficulties finding out what was our revenue, and it used to take a lot of time. So we've developed the system so we can get on daily flash numbers and daily closing, so we know how we are doing and where are the problems and if there are issues that we need to resolve. And majority of the problems are either technology or people issues, specifically in a retail environment. I've used before, cost again, as I said before, direct, indirect costs are very important. Ratio of indirect to direct is very important for you as an HR. You need to know from the cost perspective, are you overstaffed? Do you have areas where there's shortage and that you need to tackle? Revenue per employee is something that is very important for you to get from finance and to measure. Are you improving that, or you're just simply adding cost without the increase in revenue? In some areas, for example, we've had a sorting hub, a very big sorting hub for Oman Post, and in that sorting hub we had to measure cost per employee. Very important for us to reduce the cost of our operation, so we are efficient. That which impacts the pricing, and all these things are very important for an HR individual. Today, I guarantee you that an HR leader, when he wants to hire people, he would not see the link between the package he offers and the price that is offered to the customer, and he also doesn't see the value that the compensation he gives to an individual and his contribution to revenue. And those are very important links that you need to make sure that you make. And remember, we all said, during this talk, in a normal investment, they will ask you where is your return investment, okay, and how your case looks, from a business case point of view. Why that's different when it comes to HR? Because you are making investment, whether it's time, whether it's money. And you need to show the return investment, and it's not going to be you're not going to be able to show unless you show it an increase in revenue or reduction in cost.
Absolutely. In fact, I am a very firm believer, and when we implement talent management systems, we always say that when you have investments happening in training, in development, in OD interventions, you should always be able to demonstrate to the stakeholders on what's the value add these trainings and these interventions have made to the bottom line of the organization. If as HR professionals we can't really draw that inference, it'll be very difficult for us to tell a story or weave a story or give facts. Absolute. Thank you for that. John, could you in your own experience, what kind of finance and HR data has each other leveraged in terms of strategic decision making? I'm sure finance can also use a lot of HR data for their own analysis purposes, presentation purposes, etc. So could you throw some light on how these two functions exchange and interchanged certain data which they generated for their own analytics?
Well, I think I made the example before, right? Where it's about finding out what the key challenges are for the business, and then substantiate that into, well, where are the challenges that we have and what are we trying to improve for the business. And I think if you'll allow me, I'll show the human capital value profile that will kind of emphasize that. So this is where this is the how as to what we can do in terms of moving things forward, right? But first, to identify the business problem, and again, as Abdul Malik said here, return of investment capital, because this is shareholders. What are they putting into the organization? They expect something back. And shareholders, of course, future value and capital efficiency. So those are some of the key business outcomes that finance and the senior, the board and senior CEOs and CFOs are looking at. That's for sure. Now, what do they expect? Well, they expect certain level of productivity and quality and innovation and customers to be.
John, if you show the slide, that'd be great, I think.
Oh, okay.
You have a slide, isn't it?
I'm not showing the slide. All right, I'll show the slides. Yeah, let me show you. Right. There we go. Let me go to the slides here. Okay, almost there. And here we go. So again, we talked about the business outcomes, level 1. That was what the drivers were from finance and the C level or in the organization. Some of the key performance drivers that they're trying to increase, or they are parts of the end goal, which is the finances, productivity, quality, innovation, and customers. And that's what they would expect to get improvements on. Now, what is it that we need? Well, we need the workforce capability to support the productivity, quality, innovation, customers. That's where it comes in. That's where the capabilities come together. Those are the ones that needs to be established. Now, how do we do that? Well, we have to look at what are the people practices, what investments are we going to make in the people to be able to deliver against the objectives that the business have. And that comes in various ways here. It's the strategy, it's the structure and practices. So the strategy is all about, what is our human capital strategy? Are we looking at the activity-based return on investment for the employees? Are we looking at what is the organizational development design? Are we focusing on that? Do we know that there are challenges here? Let's make sure that we have that correctly in place. What about the business partners when it comes to change management? What are the processes surrounding that? We need to look at that. But the structure, what is the workforce planning? What is succession planning? So that is really about the people practices that supports the workforce capabilities. And then you have at the end of it, workforce analytics is an important practice that organizations will need to have, and that needs to be established with HR. I think this is a reflection of how you do things like this, but it will only work, as you said again, that you have to measure it and adjust it throughout the whole process, because it's like having a KPI, right? It's great to have a KPI on turnover, but how do you turn it up? How do you turn it down? How do you make it change That's where change management comes into place. And you need to monitor that over time to be able to change things. So the example that I've put here is, this is where the alignment starts happening, because you go from the right hand side towards the left with HR, and or you can take it from the left hand side to the right hand side. It really depends on where the focus is, where the key challenges are. Now, HR is traditionally here, and of course, finance is very focused on the very outcome of it, and that's how it works.
Oh, excellent. In fact, I read a case study where they looked at engagement data, and then they could link every percentage of engagement, every percentage of increase in engagement levels was leading to $600,000 worth of profits. So they could establish a link to that extent, and that's exactly what we are looking at. So I'm a firm believer that it's not just important just to implement a talent management system or put an ERP in place. The challenge is what you do with the data, right? So what do you know what to do with the data? Okay, how do you analyze it? Is where the entire game changes. Yeah. So before we go ahead, I want to ask this next question to the audience. The question, can I have the second poll question on the screen? The question to you is, what is the current level of integration between your people data and your financial data? So this question is very specific to how your finance and HR data is integrated in your organization. We are not talking about general analytics, we are talking about finance and HR. Okay, so please go ahead and poll your answers. We just want to take a dipstick and see to what extent these couples are talking to each other. Yeah, the finance and HR as partners, how much of talking and working together happens. So go ahead. So as I was telling you, while the polling is on, we need to really master the art of demystifying the data in front of us. Talent management systems today will generate a lot of data. Finance systems will generate a lot of data. Yeah. But what do you do with the data? How do you make sense? So that's why a strong analytics front end, a strong analytics tool, or a strong analytics mindset is something very important. And probably that's one key developmental area for all finance and HR professionals as we go ahead to look at it. So can we look at the score? Oh, so again, hardly any integration is 35%. That's pretty huge, and some integration is 46%. So if you see the upper quadrant, which is fairly tight integration and fully integration, is less than 20%. So we have a long way to go, and I think it's a very relevant subject. I'm so happy that SplashBI took up this opportunity to discuss this. Okay, so we go ahead. Thank you, audience, for the poll. We go ahead with the next question on how do we do that? How do we do that? Okay, what opportunity is and why they should be focusing on working together, and how does organizations generally do this? Okay, so let's look at how, because we have looked at how, what, etc. So how does organizations do this? Could you throw some light on this subject? How does HR and finance collaborate?
Is that a question for me, I guess? Right?
Yeah, it's for you.
Okay. So I think some of the key areas that I would suggest that needs to happen is, in terms of the how, is I've shown you the methodology that we call the human capital value profile. That is certainly a methodology that organizations can lean themselves towards, which will find insights into areas of HR that they can improve on, what can be improved for the business outcome. But when it comes to practical things, it's about changing the behavior for HR and finance. And there are 4 things that comes to mind there. And the first thing is the commitment. So commitment means that we need to get senior managers in place to be able to build up an infrastructure and build up a mindset of how do we start changing things from an analytical perspective of how things are interdependent, as Abdul Malik has said several times. You know, if sales go up, what about employee engagement? What is the relationship between it? And things like that. And then have a deeper understanding of the metrics that are coming out, and then promote that as a performance problem, and then build on that. Now, it's not just that. It is also, you know, looking at that it's not just cost driven, it's also performance driven. It's the business outcome we're trying to improve on here. And I think strategically or historically, HR has been more of a cost center and an admin center. But I think things have changed for sure, that it needs to be part of a profit center that will help organizations to make more revenue. Now, that's a commitment that we need to have from the managers in HR, but also in finance, to work together. Our support then is to educate them and then share the program results of those things that they start doing. So really be able to support those leaders with the insight, and also get the involvement engaged for those programs themselves. Now, the next thing is really, how do we start getting them involved? And that's all about, you know, giving them insight and giving them advice and giving them, you know, design thinking, and then presenting things for them is the way to go forward. Because often when you present something to them that makes it easier for them to consume, makes it easier for them to do the change management and then start implementing things, right? And then at the end of it, you know, I think the reinforcement of how you do things is to make sure that there is rewards, you know, for application of a new program, that we can see that, okay, well, here we go. HR has actually proven that they can change the learning program, and here's the outcome of it, and then promote that to the business and to the board and say, this is what happened in HR. So that will elevate HR up to a more, you know, strategic function as such. So those four things in conjunction is really the how to do it. But it's not something that happens overnight, for sure, right?
Absolutely, absolutely. So thanks for that. We are kind of short of time, so we'll quickly go ahead with a couple of questions I have. Abdul Malik, this question is for you. So in your opinion, how much of critical data is not available in database systems, and probably you have them in Excel files and standalone systems? For example, I know things like risk of leaving, potential for promotions, for other assignments or related information. You don't really get them in your database. You know, your ERP system may not really generate this information. You must have done a separate exercise or a study, and that information should be available somewhere in an Excel sheet sitting with some executive, or in one of their drives, flash drives or something like that. So in your opinion, what is your experience, you know, in terms of critical HR data available for access?
Well, we would not be here if it's available. I think you know, we go back to indicators. Leading indicators are usually you know, I don't think they are available for HR to that extent. However, there are a lot of ideas, there are innovative ideas. Use different tools to actually gauge the what's happening ahead of time, or at least get the data simultaneously in your fingertip. Now, majority of the data that you need, if we're talking about timely information for HR, is not available, and majority of the system give you lacking indicators. You know, if absolute numbers are there, you know, you can get always cost information. You can always get revenue, which is in a lot of cases, you know, you can get daily information, but you don't get the productivity of a new staff and his contribution. You won't get, you know, the well-being or the emotional status of a staff, the engagement of a staff, unless you do a survey. So these are information that are not available today, not even in Excel sheets. I might have the engagement survey of last year results, but if you ask me today how engaged are people and what's the state of mind today, it's going to be, you know what, let's do a survey. and check. And in a perfect world, I think systems have to give us that. There are a lot of other information that are not missing. See anything that we're talking about people contributions, and whether we like it, far away from the rhetorics, and a lot of people they always say people are our most important assets, and if you see on the ground you don't see these statements are translated into action. But whether we like it or not, in a service industry like logistics, for example, people are delivering the service, and they are your most important assets. If they are not in the right state of mind, in the right level of engagement, in the right level of skills, capabilities, environment, then they will not give you the result that you want. So in my personal view, leading indicators are not there. We don't have the right systems to actually give us that. And also, if you look at all the information from finance, I think, as John said, the proper analysis of linking financial data to people outcome or people context is not there today. It does not exist. Probably, I haven't come across a system that gives you that today. I'm sure some people did customize, but these are things that today still are in development, and I think these are some of the areas that we need to look into.
Yeah, true. Thanks. And I think that's where technology is going to play a vital role. And you have led me into the other question which I had in mind for John. There's a lot of buzzword on artificial intelligence and data, predictability coming into HR information. So creating more of lead indicators in the HR domain rather than working on lag indicators. So in your example, either with the Splash or otherwise, what can you give us examples of how does these systems generate predictive analytics information and in AI, using AI-based tools for taking HR decisions? So give us some examples of areas where we could use predictive analytics in human resources.
Well, it's an interesting topic, AI as such, because working in with a very large organization, worldwide organization, the UN actually, who are talking about AI in HR processes to optimize HR processes. So there are various things with regards to that. One thing is that you can put chatbots in there to automate some of the manual processes. That will reduce cost, of course, of the HR administration, but also when it comes to machine learning, I think Abdul Malik actually mentioned something about flight risk, right? Flight risk is one of those things where you can look at the past to determine the future. I had a situation where it was at a demonstration where we went out to the key people in HR and then presented them, flight risk in terms of, so here's what are the key attributes of people that have left in the past. Here are the tenure of their engagement with the organization. Here's the age group. Here's the gender, and here is the job role, etc., etc. And then looked at who are the people that are then based on that. Who are the current population have got those attributes that are most likely to leave next. Again, based on machine learning, who are those people? That's where you can use machine learning. So we did that, and we showed a few people then in the interface, right, in the dashboard. And then next time we were invited back was with the key stakeholders for the C-level. We did the same presentation, and then the guy that was from HR, he said, "John, this is exactly the same. The person that's on the top there, that person's actually left the company now." So this is where it really is powerful to understand, based on machine learning, what the future may bring. But again, you need to have the data that exists from the past to be able to build the future. So that's just one example of it. But I think machine learning is very much something that people are striving towards. But many organizations are still at the stage where let's just get our key KPIs in place and then be able to improve them up and down. And then we can predict what the future will bring afterwards. So it's kind of a phased approach. But that's why I mean, I'm not going to sell this, but this is why we are taking our customers on that journey, right? And so, yeah, that was an example
Good.
of it.
Good. I think we are almost coming to the close of the question answers. So what I wanted to request the audience is, if you want the panelists to address any specific questions, please use the Q&A box down and type your question. I already have some questions. So please type your questions in the Q&A box down. While I ask this question, we'll wrap up in the next 5 to 6 minutes. So very quickly, some relevant questions. So I have one question here, which says that in a post-pandemic world, employee productivity is of critical importance for business. How can right data analytics help in improving employee productivity? So Abdul Malik, do you want to take it? Because you've really worked a lot in this area, and I've seen the transformation you made in Oman Post in terms of employee productivity. I'm a consumer of Oman Post. So can you take this question, on what can data analytics do to employee productivity? How have you intelligently used data to work on employee productivity?
Yeah, sorry, just fine. Okay. In general, I think I can't think of a clear example, but employee productivity is a key issue. Back in my days with Oman Post, we've used transactions and across the retail network to define the number of resources we need for certain post offices. We've used, for example, network gravity model to see how drivers should move to reduce the number of drivers we have in the network. So we do route planning based on the volume that we receive in the hub. We have revamped sorting logics, for example, in our sorting hubs, to look at where the largest volumes are coming. And we started looking at how can we get the data in advance and link up, look at analytics around the airport cargo hubs data across different airports. And these are things that they did not exist. And for us, for example, in 2019, we have actually reduced our workforce by almost probably around 10 to 15% in one single year without increasing it. And that was because we've looked at all the data we have and how knowing your volume and the type of the volume that you have and the type of your transaction can impact the resources that you need at a specific time period.
Great example on what you could do with data and productivity. I have another very interesting question. This is for you, John. So the question is it necessary to have an ERP of any sort or a data analytics tool for analyzing unstructured data? Can it be, what is the advantage of having a system for doing it? Can't we just use unstructured data, use Excel, use your own skills to connect this data and make sense of it? So why do we need a system or a tool to do it? This is a question. John, you can take it.
Sure. I think it's a very valid question. No, it's not necessary to have Oracle or ERP to use SplashBI. It really, we take any kind of data into our data warehouse in any format it comes. Mostly it's in data extract with CSV files, but we also have connectors where we connect to Oracle, SuccessFactors, Workday, etc., directly to extract the data that we need. And again, it needs to be the data that's relevant for the productivity, like Abdul Malik said. If we need the data to be able to understand what the productivity levels are, we would take it from those source systems in any way that it is. But mostly we see that we help out because organizations have so many spreadsheets out there that it's very difficult to build any analytics on. It's more for KPI purposes they use spreadsheets, versus using that with a solution like SplashBI, where they can get the pre-built charts and dashboards that will give insights into how to potentially make decisions in HR for the best outcome. Okay, so in summary, any kind of data.
I think the challenge is in getting real-time data and fast. Like Abdul Malik was mentioning, what is the point in knowing your engagement score 6 months later? Because the water has already flown under the bridge. You have already, the events have happened, right? So we already work with past data. So the faster we get data, present data, we can act on it and can make sense out of it and put interventions in place. And I think any kind of analytics tool would really do this. And that is why we need it. And especially with large organizations, large group companies, with disparate systems, different entities. If at a group level or at a strategic board level, you need to make sense out of data, you would need some kind of an analytical tool. And if there are systems which comes pre-built with tools based out of experience, you don't have to go through the learning curve. It's already there. You just connect it and use it. So that's where I see it adding value. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. So we are really running out of time. There are some questions, but I don't think we have time to take it. We'll probably answer them. So we will conclude today's session with closing remarks from both of you. A quick 30-second closing remarks from John and then Abdul Malik on what we discussed and what and how should we take things forward. Go ahead, John.
Okay, so I think it's the magic triangle here, right? The CHRO, the CFO, and the CEO works very closely together, and that integration needs to be much tighter. But hopefully, with some of the observations that we had today here, is that will facilitate that collaboration across those. So I think the first thing is really to initiate the meeting with HR from a finance perspective, or from finance to HR. Let's initiate these meetings and start that and find a common topic to talk about. It could be workforce planning, it could be succession, it could be revenue that needs to be delivered with the sales organization. How can we change things? Find that initial meeting and have those discussions. I think then identify those people-related financial business opportunity, and then solidify that as a potential area to focus on. Using the human capital value profile is a tool or methodology to use that will take you through, because this comes with a set of questionnaires that will be asked in the recruitment process or the talent management process or learning management process. Ask questions to derive what challenges that exist there and what potentially can be improved. So that will help prioritize the things to focus on. And then lastly, share the data across the functions, share the data from finance and HR, and then put that into the single data warehouse and establish that people analytics practice, because that will be the foundation for HR to become more strategic and for finance to become more successful in terms of outcomes for the business. Those are my final observations and advice that I would give organizations.
Thank you, John. Abdul Malik, over to you.
Yeah, I don't think I have anything to add on that, John. I think John has summarized a very good set of conclusions, and I think the path is very clear for HR professionals. They need to follow it, and I hope we've learned something today, and I hope this whole analytic business in HR takes grows, and I'm sure it's going to add a lot of value and impact to organizations, 100%. And I'm happy to catch up after a year and see if we can if we made any progress.
Absolutely,
Yes.
we will do a session just to follow up on what has happened. Yeah.
It will be interesting.
Thank you, all of you, for this wonderful sharing of your insights. We had varied backgrounds, panelists from various backgrounds who came and shared their thoughts. Thank you very much. So I would like to just make one closing remark, which I would like all of you to take back as a pondering thought. As I said, the skill what we need today is what do we do with data, okay? And how do we make sense out of disparate data or any kind of data, what is available. And I think that is what, as finance professionals and HR professionals, we need to focus in mastering or add as a competency or as a skill which we need to acquire in the days to come, because data is going to be available in abundance thanks to digitization. So availability of data is not going to be a problem going forward. What you are going to do with data is going to be a challenge. Yeah? And the differentiating factor between a successful HR and finance organization, or a successful organization and not so successful organization, is how well they leverage data in their decision making. So thank you all of you, and thank you UMS, thank you SplashBI for sponsoring this very, very knowledge-oriented seminar. And over to you, Alvin. Thank you very much. Have a nice evening ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so this brings us to the end of today's webinar. There were plenty of points to take away today from this webinar, and we would like to thank Mr. Abdul Malik Al-Balushi, Mr. John Jensen, and Mr. Venkatesh Palkar for sharing all your incisive insights. Also, a big thanks to everybody who tuned in today to watch the webinar. For more updates on today's session, tune in to Business Live Middle East website at www.businessliveme.com. We will also be sharing a video on our platform soon. Take care and stay safe. Thank you.